And this leads us to 2000 and the release of Mega Man X5. Once again in this series you could play as X or Zero, but you chose at the beginning of each stage. Now, of great importance was who you chose at the beginning of the intro stage. If you chose Zero, then you got to keep your Z-Buster for the rest of the game. But if you chose X, then you got to keep his 4th armor. The other character, as part of the story, got damaged during the intro and lost whatever extra powers they might have had. Story-wise, humanity was trying to expand up into space using space colonies that they had been building up in orbit around our planet. Now, the largest of these was called Eurasia. Sigma hired a bounty hunter named Dynamo to help him crash Eurasia into the planet Earth. This would result in a catastrophic explosion and the spreading of the Sigma virus over the entire surface of the planet. Now, this was a special version of the Sigma virus that was designed to reawaken the original Zero as he'd been created by Wily, and thus wreak havoc on the planet and destroy all of humanity in the process. This was the first game in any of Mega Man's history where you could crouch. That's right, you could crouch in Mega Man X5. They first started that here. And to be honest, you wouldn't think it would be that big of a deal, but it really changes up the gameplay. It adds a whole new element of strategy to how you run through this game. It was really, really cool. This was also the very first game to use the ranking system. Personally, I've never been a fan of it. What it meant was you were judged on how quickly you got through the stage, how little damage you took, and how effectively you fought the stage final boss. Depending upon your rank, would decide what kind of upgrades and power-ups and special items you got at the end of each stage. Technically, it wasn't necessary to fight through all of the stages to end this game. This game was based on a timing system. You had in-game 16 hours to defeat all of the Maverick bosses and assemble a weapon that could destroy the space station Eurasia before it hit Earth. Or you could just choose to deploy yourself to the space station and blow it up from there. The bosses in this game also had a leveling up ability. So depending upon how you had played through the other stages and how well you had done, the bosses at the end would be more leveled up, have bigger life meters, and be more difficult to defeat. But if you defeated the harder bosses, you got better stuff out of it at the end. Something needs to be pointed out here. Mega Man X5 was supposed to be the last game in the X series. The storyline and the way that it finishes were supposed to be it. It was a beautiful, amazing way to finish the story. I'm not going to give that many spoilers and tell you how it ended. You have to play through it. You have to experience it. But it was a poetic and beautiful finish to this series. I cannot state that enough. This is, for the true diehard fan, the end of the series. This is where Mega Man X finished. Now, of course, as popular and fantastic a series as this is, Capcom wasn't quite ready to let it go yet, so in 2006, we got Mega Man X6. Obviously, this game follows up Mega Man X5, and gameplay-wise and graphically very much the same. The big, exciting mystery for this game was supposed to be whether or not Zero was still alive, which is pretty much blatantly stated from the manual all the way through. You know that he is, and there's just something you're going to have to do to get him back, and really it isn't even that difficult. After the events of Mega Man X5, humanity is forced to live underground, while Reploids are working on the surface to clean up the damage. A piece of rubble, however, is discovered by a scientist named Gate, and it corrupts him. He then assigns a force with his friend Isaac to take down the Zero Nightmare. Zero is basically being blamed for having caused all of this disruption and destruction, and they've created a shattered image of him to try and take the blame. By reassembling the parts of Zero and bringing him back to life, you clear his name and he helps you to finish the story. That brings us to 2003's Mega Man X7. Now, this was the first 3D game in the X series. It was done with cell shading, so it was supposed to maintain that cartoony look. However, it didn't really work that well. To be honest, this is most people's least favorite game in the series, and it most certainly was mine. They introduced a new character, Axel, who was very cool, and his design is very nice. I really like it. I like the idea that he uses 2 handguns instead of a buster, but otherwise he plays a lot like Mega Man X himself. He also has the Mimic Shot. He can change into any enemy he destroys with it, and that gives him a limited amount of their powers. Initially, you can't play as Mega Man X in this game until you've rescued 64 Reploid survivors, at which point he becomes unlocked. Story-wise, the Maverick Hunters have been weakened by the retirement of Mega Man X. He's decided he's had enough of the violence and destruction, and he's not going to be involved anymore. Another group rises to power called Red Alert, but they use what some would consider questionable and unsavory tactics in quelling Maverick outbreaks. Throughout all of this, of course, Sigma is poking his dirty nose in there and trying to make things worse. Axel decides to defect from Red Alert and goes to the Maverick Hunters. This incites a very big conflict that turns into a war between the Maverick Hunters and Red Alert. I'll be honest with you, I never finished Mega Man X7. I really wasn't a fan of the way that they'd done the game, and I couldn't finish it. And also, one of the bosses is Tornado Tunyon. I mean, really? A fucking onion? And that brings us to Mega Man X8. Released in 2005 for the PC and the PS2, Mega Man X8 apparently reclaims the glory of the X series. It sticks to the 2D gameplay style. It really goes back to the original elements that made the series great, but I personally never played it because I never got through X7. Now, 2004 was an interesting year for the Mega Man X series because we got Mega Man X Command Mission. It was the only JRPG entry into a Mega Man series ever, and we are talking full-on traditional, turn-based combat, and a cast of whole new characters, the overworld map, exploring all of it. It's a JRPG and a fantastic game to boot. A meteorite has crashed to Earth, and as it's being studied, they found a metal ore in it. This metal ore produces a very specific kind of energy that, when brought in contact with Reploids, can manifest new powers and incredible strength in them. An island research facility is built over the meteor crash site called Gaia Island. On this island, they're doing tests on some of the Reploids with this metal. One such subject, called Epsilon, kinda goes Maverick and a bit berserk. The story has X-Zero and the rest of their team going in to try and stop him. There were also 2 Game Boy games for the Game Boy Color, Mega Man Extreme 1 and 2. Mega Man Extreme is set just after the second defeat of Sigma. The Maverick Hunter database gets hacked and starts reviving some of the old Mavericks. So X goes in to fight them and stop this. He ends up getting himself digitized and put into the virtual world to fight the 2 who are actually behind it. The 2 new bosses are called Zane and Gamil, and they feature a very medieval-inspired design. They're the hackers that are causing all the havoc. It was very cool to see a more sprite, kind of 8-bit style Mega Man X game, but it was very difficult to try and get the same controls out of it with only 2 buttons and a joypad. Mega Man Extreme 2 is basically a follow-up to the first one, but it's improved in almost every way. They haven't tried to completely mimic the controls, they made them a lot better. They've made the graphics a little prettier, and the storyline is really, really cool. At one point, Reploids just stop functioning. Some of them are found that are completely hollow shells. All spark of their life is gone. This starts becoming more frequent, so the Maverick Hunters are sent in to investigate. Now, there's X and Zero are dispatched, and they're sent in with Iris as their spotter, so we get to see Iris again, although this game is set before her appearance in X4. An excellent game, quite challenging. I really recommend it for die-hard fans of the series. Now, of course, in addition to my collection of the games, I have picked up a few pieces of merchandise over the years. I've got the single from the Mega Man X7 soundtrack, which is called Lazy Mind. I have the Mega Man X collector card from Game Players magazine over here. I have an assortment of collectible figures, and of course, the gem of those, my Mega Man X ride armor. I remember buying this. I went to one of the malls near where Johnny and I live, a place called Yauhan Center, and it was $150, and at the time I didn't have that kind of money on a regular basis. I had managed to scrimp and save this money, and I had to get it. I had to have this as part of my collection, and I'm really glad I got it. I also have the Mega Man X GameCube controller. Now, this was released at the same time as the Mega Man X collection. It's a really nice looking controller. It's got the Mega Man X artwork on it and a design aesthetic that's reminiscent of X designs. What was sad was that they advertised it saying that when you charge your X-Buster, the controller would slowly pulse faster and faster and faster until it was glowing with internal light. They never actually managed to make that feature come through in the final product. But it's still a very nice looking controller. Anyways, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this look back at the Mega Man X series. It's an incredible extension of the classic series, but really holds a fantastic legacy of its own. Until next time.